You won't believe the political bombshell that just dropped in Texas. Republicans have unleashed what sources are calling a brutal redistricting strategy.
Huh.
So savage and devastating, it could hand them 5 new House seats, potentially reshaping Congress for years.
5 seats is a lot.
It really is. We're talking about a move nicknamed the One Big Beautiful Map, fully endorsed by former President Donald Trump. It reportedly has Democrats panicking.
I can imagine.
And one prominent progressive is apparently facing political erasure. This isn't just lines on a map. It's being framed as a political nuke, said to ignite a red wave in 2026. Let's unpack this.
Yeah, the battle for political power is definitely heating up, and states are, well, aggressively redrawing the lines of democracy itself. Today, we dive into the high-stakes world of redistricting, where every single boundary change could shift the balance of power for years to come.
Exactly. So today, we're taking that deep dive into this intense partisan conflict over congressional redistricting. We're going to look at this mid-decade redistricting phenomenon, what that actually is, and the huge legal battles happening around race-based maps.
Right. It's strategy, it's law, and it really touches the foundation of our representative democracy.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to break down these complex strategic moves, the legal challenges behind them.
And most importantly, what it all means for you, the voter. How does this affect the balance of power in Washington? It's complicated stuff, but understanding it is key right now.
Okay, let's start with this Republican strategy. It's undeniably bold. We usually think of redistricting happening once every 10 years, right? After the census.
That's standard.
But mid-decade redistricting. What is that exactly? And why are states like Texas pushing it now, between the official census counts?
That's the crucial question. Mid-decade redistricting is, well, exactly what it sounds like, redrawing those maps between the normal 10-year cycles. And Texas Republicans are doing this now for a couple of big reasons, according to proponents.
Okay, like what?
First, Texas has seen massive growth. We're talking an estimated 2 million new residents just since the 2020 census.
2 million? Wow.
Yeah. So proponents argue these new maps are just trying to reflect those real demographic changes, making sure representation matches where people actually live now.
So part of it is just catching up with reality on the ground.
That's the argument. It's a response to genuine population shifts. But there's a second major factor, a recent court ruling. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They reversed a decades-old stance.
Okay, what stance was that?
It was about coalition districts.
Yeah.
These are districts drawn specifically to combine different racial groups to boost their voting power, often seen as protected under the Voting Rights Act.
Right, I've heard of those.
Well, the Fifth Circuit just ruled that these political alliances between different racial groups, as they put it, are not protected by the Voting Rights Act.
That sounds like a really big legal shift. How does that connect to what Texas is doing right now?
It's huge because it changes the rule book for drawing districts. Basically, the court is saying states can't make race the main factor, even if the goal is empowering minority voters. In fact, the Justice Department itself had warned Texas about 4 specific districts, saying they unconstitutionally, illegally used race as a predominant factor in how they were drawn. So this current effort in Texas is framed by supporters as a direct response. They're saying they need to comply with these new legal interpretations, correct past maps.
Gotcha. So it's presented as complying with the law, not just a power grab. And it sounds like conservative groups are supportive. You mentioned Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts praised Texas.
Yeah, he said they have done a good job. They've reset lines that actually reflect 2 million new people arriving in the state since 2020. It highlights this idea that it's about reflecting reality and current law.
Okay, so let's talk concrete impacts. What are the actual gains Republicans are looking at here, state by state?
Numbers are pretty stark.
In Texas, we mentioned the One Big Beautiful Map. It's projected to flip 5 Democratic seats to Republican. That shifts the delegation from 25-13 Republican to potentially 38 Republican.
A massive shift.
Sources say urban Democratic areas like Dallas, Houston, Austin are being torn apart. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's district is apparently literally removed. It's not just tweaking lines, it's redrawing the battlefields.
It really underscores the scale of this. It's about creating a strong baseline for the GOP for the next decade in Texas. Not just winning the next election, but shaping the landscape itself.
And Texas isn't alone in this aggressive approach, right? This is happening elsewhere, too.
Absolutely. Look at Ohio. Republicans there are reportedly on the verge of picking up 2 or 3 more seats. Okay. That could change the state's delegation from 10 to 5 Republican to maybe 12-3 Republican, making Ohio, as some put it, really, really deep red.
Wow. And even in states already leaning Republican.
Yeah, even there. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is apparently exploring a mid-decade plan to push their current 20-8 Republican advantage even further.
Potentially targeting specific Democratic seats.
Exactly. Seats in South Florida, like the one held by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, could be in danger. And you've got Missouri and Indiana, too. Republicans there are reportedly thinking about special sessions to aim for a 7-1 Republican edge in Missouri and an 8-1 advantage in Indiana.
So adding all this up,
Mm-hmm.
what's the potential national impact on the House?
The projections are significant. Republicans think they could gain anywhere from 8 to 12 House seats just from redistricting alone.
Just from redistricting, before any votes are cast in 2026.
Precisely. This could give them a starting point of, say, 217 seats heading into the 2026 midterms. They'd only need one more for a majority. Or potentially they could start the next Congress with 230 seats outright. It's seen as a quiet, methodical, devastating strategy.
Okay, with stakes that high, it's understandable why Democrats are pushing back hard. We saw that dramatic move in Texas, where House Democrats actually fled the state.
Right, trying to break quorum to block the legislation. It led to civil arrest warrants, potential fines.
Yeah, $500 a day, I think.
Something like that. Federal agencies, Texas Rangers, were reportedly involved in locating them. But, Governor Abbott can just keep calling special sessions until they have a quorum. It becomes a standoff.
And the pushback isn't just in Texas. California's Governor Gavin Newsom threatened retaliation, right? Fight fire with fire, he said, pledging to redraw California's maps.
Yes, but that's where it gets, well, kind of ironic.
Is it?
Because California is somewhat tracked by their own redistricting laws and commissions. They adopted those fairness rules specifically to take partisanship out of map drawing, using independent commissions.
So the very rules meant to stop gerrymandering are now hindering their ability to retaliate.
Exactly. So Newsom is apparently looking for a legal pathway to bypass the commissional, maybe put new maps directly to voters on a ballot.
Which has drawn criticism.
Oh, yeah. Republican Rep. Kevin Kiley called it a redistricting sham, a subversion of voters' will. He cited a Politico poll showing 64% of voters oppose it, and it could cost taxpayers maybe $250 million. It really highlights this tension between fairness ideals and partisan reality.
So while California figures that out, Democrats elsewhere are accusing Republicans of cheating, trying to steal the 2026 midterms.
Right, that's the accusation. But the counter-argument from the conservative side is important here for context.
Okay, what's that?
They argue that, historically, Democrats have been the biggest beneficiaries of race-based gerrymandering, that they created districts built entirely around race so that they could stay in power.
So, from that perspective, the current push against race-based districts isn't partisan cheating, but correcting a long-standing issue.
That's the argument. They see the Supreme Court's direction as upholding the Constitution, not picking sides. It's framed as leveling a playing field they believe was tilted.
And that brings us squarely to the courts, because the Supreme Court seems to be signaling a major shift on race and redistricting. Sources say the court made it clear that they are ready to kill race-based redistricting because it's racist.
It's a huge potential shift, yeah. The key case to watch is Louisiana v. Clay. It argues race-based gerrymandering violates the 14th and 15th Amendments' equal protection voting rights.
And this could impact older precedents.
Absolutely. The expectation is this ruling could effectively shut down the Jingles case from 1986. Jingles set the framework for proving vote dilution based on race, allowing those majority-minority districts under certain conditions.
So if Jingles falls,
Then a key tool for creating or defending those districts disappears. Some projections suggest Democrats could lose about 20 congressional seats practically overnight. It would fundamentally change how race can be considered in map-making.
we also saw the Alexander v. South Carolina case, right? Another racial gerrymandering challenge.
Yes, and interestingly, the DOJ actually supported affirming a lower court decision that blocked South Carolina's 1st District on those grounds.
But what are conservative groups arguing in these cases?
Well, in amicus briefs for the South Carolina case, groups like the National Republican Redistricting Trust and Judicial Watch called many redistricting lawsuits a nuisance. They argued the map was drawn with partisan goals, not a racial one.
Trying to separate race from politics.
Exactly. They want to disentangle the two, arguing that linking them conflates issues and could even impair judicial legitimacy. They're pushing the idea that if the intent is partisan, not racial, it's different legally.
Which ties back to that Rucho decision from 2019, doesn't it? Where the Supreme Court said partisan gerrymandering is a non-justiciable political question.
Precisely. Rucho basically said federal courts won't step in just because a map is drawn for partisan advantage. That ruling effectively opened the door for states to engage in extreme partisan gerrymandering.
Meaning the fight shifted away from federal courts on that issue.
Right. It intensified the battle in state legislatures and state courts, contributing directly to this redistricting arms race we're seeing now. Fewer federal guardrails on pure partisanship.
So with all this state-level action and court shifts, is anyone proposing a federal solution?
Yes, actually. California Republican Rep. Kevin Kiley, the same one critical of Newsom's plan, plans to introduce a bill to ban mid-decade redistricting nationwide.
A national ban. What would that do?
It would prohibit adjusting congressional district lines, except in the years immediately following the decennial census. The idea is to create a more predictable redistricting framework, make the process more stable, and deter manipulation between censuses.
Interesting. So trying to lock in the maps for the decade once they're drawn post-census?
Essentially, yes, to bring more stability and predictability.
Now, beyond the maps themselves, there are other big shifts happening that relate to who gets represented and how votes are cast, like this directive about the census.
Right. President Trump reportedly instructed the Commerce Department to start working on a new census, one that would not count illegal immigrants for apportionment purposes.
Okay, what's the argument for doing that?
The core conservative argument is about representation for citizens only. Probans say the Constitution doesn't bar more frequent censuses, and that a citizenship question used to be standard until the Obama administration.
And the impact would be?
Significant. Using the citizen population to redistrict instead of total population, it would very much change the political boundaries of many congressional districts, especially in states with large non-citizen populations. It reallocates power based on who can legally vote.
And is this also framed as correcting past errors?
Yes. The argument goes that the 2020 census had serious errors. It supposedly overcounted 8 states, undercounted 6, including Texas, which they say lost a seat, and Florida, which lost 2.
So this new census aims to fix those counts and base representation solely on citizens.
That's the goal presented. Correct errors and ensure representation reflects the citizen population, preventing what they call foreign interference by excluding non-citizens from the count used for political power allocation.
And tied into election integrity, there was also that court ruling about mail-in ballots in Texas.
Right. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a Texas law. It says mail-in ballots can be invalidated if they're submitted without proper voter ID.
How's that being framed?
As a major win for election integrity by supporters, they often view mail-in ballots as one of the biggest sources of election fraud.
So they see voter ID as essential.
Exactly. They argue it's just common sense needed for honest and fair elections, similar to needing ID for many other things. This ruling supports the state's power to enforce those ID requirements, even for mail votes.
Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground here. Let's try to sum this up. We've seen Republican states using mid-decade redistricting, plus a changing legal scene, to really reshape the electoral map, expecting big gains. We've looked at the Supreme Court potentially moving away from race-based gerrymandering, and this push for citizen-only counts in the census.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, looking at it from the conservative viewpoint presented in these sources, is how these actions are framed. They're presented as efforts to correct perceived imbalances, to ensure the republic reflects the will of its citizens, not, partisan games or old legal ideas about race.
So the big question for you, the listener, is, what does this all add up to? As states redraw these battle lines and courts shift legal ground, you're left thinking, is this a return to what proponents call foundational principles, citizen representation, election integrity?
Or is it just the next phase, maybe a more aggressive phase in this ongoing high-stakes fight for political control? The lines are literally being redrawn, and the impact, well, we'll definitely feel it in the elections ahead.